Pastor welcomes and brings the word today.
I heard this story as a young man and grew up in the mountains of North Carolina. And I heard this story, and I like to tell it every once in a while. Man walking across the mountains on an old logging road, and he rounds a bend and comes face to face with a she-bear and two cubs. She sees him about the same time he sees her, and they both take off running, her right behind him. He's running as hard as he can go, and she's gaining on him. He's just almost to where he can feel her breath on the back of his neck. And he thinks, she's going to get me. He looks down the road, and there's a limb hanging out over the road. He said, when I get there, I'm going to jump and catch that limb, and she'll just run on through. He said, the closer I got, the higher the limb got. And I thought, there's no way I can catch that limb. No way I can jump that high. He said, but I got to try. So he gets there, and he gives a mighty leap into the air. And he missed the limb. Going up, he caught it on the way back down. Sometimes you just have to try. Now, I promise you, this is not going to be a traditional 4th of July, liberty and freedom kind of sermon. I'm going to talk about Hosea and Gomer. How many have ever thought, I wish God would just speak to me? Come on, be honest. I used to do that. God, would you just tell me? I don't do that anymore. Because every time he speaks to me, he tells me to do something I don't want to do or something that I really don't want to hear. So I quit asking him to talk to me. Just don't say anything, God. Just leave me alone. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. And he didn't pay no attention to me. Some people say, well, I wish I was a prophet. You're insane. Do you know what prophets sometimes have to do things that are really weird? In the book of Hosea, I love the book of Hosea. That's one of my favorite books. And the story of the Hosea had a long line. In chapter 1, he had a long line. He gives a line of his heritage and the people that he prophesied to. And he prophesied to all of these different kings in verse 1, Hosea chapter 1, verse 1. And then, now, God had never spoken to him, period. He knew he was called to be a prophet, but God hadn't told him anything to prophesy. And the first thing he told Hosea to do, listen in verse 2, I'm in Hosea chapter 1, verse 2. This is what he told him to do. In the beginning of the word of the Lord to Hosea. First thing he said to him, Hosea, go take you a wife of whoredoms and children of whoredoms. For the land has committed whoredom, departing from the Lord. And he went and took Gomer. Now this is not what you think. Hosea, God caused him to fall madly in love with Gomer. Now this is not a Harlequin romance. It's not a Hallmark story. All Hallmark movies and stories are the same. Boy meets girl, girl meets boy, boy hates girl, girl hates boy. Before it's over, they fall in love and get married, live happy ever after. They're all the same. If you've seen one, you've seen them all. He fell madly in love with Gomer. This is a beautiful story of God's love for his people. Now, Hosea knew that Gomer was not a virtuous woman. She sold herself on the streets, but he loved her anyway. I'm just going to tell the story. I won't read much to you. I'm just going to tell you the story. 3 children were born. The first one, Hosea knew this was his child. The second child was born, and he was not sure. He wasn't sure it was his. He thought it could be, but he wasn't sure. The third child was born, and he knew that was not his child. Their personal relationship had ceased a long time ago. So he knew she was seeing other men and that this third child was not his. And she finally left Hosea and left the kids. And she went back to her old life on the streets, a woman of the streets. Years passed. Now let's skip ahead to on down in the story. Gomer became a slave. Gradually, she became a slave, sold from man to man, a toy, just a plaything, a possession. At each sale, now this was custom, they could buy a woman. At each sale, her worth was reduced. The beauty had left her face. Her body was not what it used to be. And Hosea never stopped loving Gomer. Now I'm going to get you catch it in a minute. He would ask about her all the time, people that knew her. No matter what she had done, he loved her anyway. This is a beautiful picture, now listen, of God's love for you. Amen. If you can take that message, he told Hosea, you go marry a prostitute. Go marry a whore. And you're going to love her. You're going to show my people how much I love them, no matter what they've done. But it's also a shattering portrayal of the viciousness of sin. Gomer had been reduced from a beauty queen to a pathetic wretch, and she had broken the heart of Hosea. He learned an eternal truth about God's love for his people. Now he's talking to Israel. But Hosea learned the powerful truth about how much God loved his people. I believe it works today as well. His people, they had been playing the harlot. They had forsaken God. They no longer had time for God. Does that sound like what's happening in our nation today? Even people who call themselves Christians no longer have time for God. They have time to do what they want to do, but they don't have time to go to God's house. They don't have time for God anymore. They've just forsaken God. So I think this message applies to us today. As Hosea suffered over Gomer, he realized how God suffers over the sin and the rejection of his people. Message is simple. No matter how far in sin you may have fallen, God never stops loving you. If the world, give him a hand. I'm glad he did. He's had several good opportunities to stop loving me. But I'm glad he didn't give up on me. God's people, no matter what you've done, God never stops loving you. Listen, God's ability to love you is far greater than your ability to hurt him. Think about it. But Mack, you don't know how far in sin I've gone. You don't know some of the terrible things I've done. My family even says there's no hope for me. But God said that he commendeth his love towards us, in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. He died for you, no matter what you've done. Hosea never stopped loving Gomer, and he never stopped searching for her. He was always asking those that knew her, have you heard anything from Gomer? Have you seen her? Is she doing all right? Is she okay? What do you know about Gomer? What's she doing now? And one day, now listen, one day in the marketplace, Hosea heard that Gomer was going to be sold in a slave auction in a neighboring city. He took what few possessions he had, which was very little. He told his children he'd be back as soon as possible. He made the trip to that town, made his way to the auction house. Now, this was not an auction place for sheep and goats and cows. This was a slave market. People were for sale. This was the junkyard of humanity, the people that were there. Inside the building, there were coarse jokes, vulgar language. Hosea made his way through the crowd trying to catch a glimpse of Gomer. Then his heart began to pound. His eyes filled with tears. There she stood, the love of his life. Head down, hands tied, dejected, broken and beaten, used up by the world. He saw the love of his life among the human garbage, about to be sold to the highest bidder. Now I hear a lot of people say, I love you. That's just become a sort of a phrase that doesn't mean much anymore. People can tell you they love you, and the next day they can desert you, walk off and leave you. It's strange to me. Now, I've been doing this for a lot of years, but it's always strange to me that the people that you have helped the most are the ones that turn on you the quickest. They tell you they love you one day and then don't show up anymore. That's just a mystery to me. Maybe some of you have an answer, but I'm just saying today, I love you has become just a cheap phrase. Doesn't have any depth to it. Love is not something you say. Love is something you do. Amen. It's not what you say, it's what you do. You know, the first picture we have of God, God was searching for Adam in the garden after Adam had sinned. God would meet with Adam every day in the cool of the day. God showed up, and Adam didn't show up. He went looking for him. Called him, Adam, Adam, where are you? It wasn't because God didn't know where Adam was. He knew where he was. He just wanted Adam to know where he was. Adam, where are you? He said, we heard you walking in the garden, and we were afraid, and we hid ourselves. What were you afraid of, Adam? What have you done? We have sinned. Who told you that it was sin? We were naked and we covered ourselves. We hid ourselves. Who told you you were naked, Adam? Where did that come from? And today, listen, today God is looking and searching for you. Wherever you may be hiding. Now that doesn't mean God doesn't know where you are. He knows where you are. He also knows what you've done. People sometimes get away from God because of something they've done. They feel they've failed God, been a miserable failure, and they drop out of church. They get away from God. But God's reaching out today for people. Now just think what that means. Almighty God, creator of the heavens and the earth. I mean, he rules the universe. He set the stars in space. But he loved you enough to go looking for you. Jesus came to seek and to save that which was lost. He's looking for you. Hosea never stopped loving Gomer, no matter what she had done. He never stopped searching for her, and when he found her, he was willing to pay everything he had to buy her back. In chapter 3, verses 1 and 2, the Lord told me, go love a woman, an adulteress, according to the love of the Lord towards his children Israel, who look to other gods and they love their wine. So I bought her for 15 pieces of silver. That is not very much, just a very few cents. And for an omer and a half of barley. Now that's what he did. He took everything he had. Now get this picture. He took everything he had, went to the auction house, made his way through the crowd, and then he saw her. There she was, on the auction block. Dull eyes staring at the floor. No future, no hope. She wondered, who's going to buy me this time? She knew it really didn't make much difference. It was all going to be the same. She knew it wouldn't take much to buy her now because her value had decreased. She knew she wasn't worth much. And no one knew that more than Gomer. Then the bidding started. Suddenly, every nerve in her body came alive. That voice. I know that voice. Could that really be Hosea? Is he really bidding for me? What would he want with me? I've let him down. I've violated his trust. He was bidding for her. She could not believe what she was hearing. She strained to see him. And there he was. She saw him. He was looking at her, hot tears streaming down his face. He lifted his hand in a tender gesture of love, saying hi. He still loved her. All Hosea had was 15 pieces of silver and a bushel and a half of barley. Not much to buy a slave. He knew he didn't stand a chance. Wondered if he had enough. He bid everything he had. He paid the price. He was shocked when the bidding stopped and he had purchased his wife. He had redeemed her and bought her back. He paid the price to buy her back. He paid the auctioneer, ran to the auction block, tore the bonds off of her hands, setting her free. Now, here I'm going to stop just a minute. Do you know what it means to really be free? Do you know what it cost in this country for us to be able to be here today? Our forefathers gave everything they had. Many of them gave their life. Man. They pledged everything they had to give us the freedom that we have in this country. Right now we have military men and women. How many were in the military? Let me see your hand. We have a lot of military people in our church, but there's a lot of military today. They're missing legs, arms, parts of their body. They paid a price for us to have the freedom that we have today. And I think we should honor them every chance we get. Amen. He was shocked and surprised when the bidding stopped and he had purchased his wife. He redeemed her. He paid the price and bought her back. He paid the auctioneer. He took her bony, emaciated body in his arms and held her gently. He had given everything he had of value just to buy her back. He had once courted her, loved her, married her, and then lost her. Now he bought her back, and no price was too great for him to pay to get her back. Now I want to read verse 3, chapter 3. And he said to her, "You will abide with me. You'll spend the rest of your life with me. You will not have any other men in your life, and so it will be with me. I will not have anybody else. You will no longer be the harlot. You will be only for me." He bought her. Now listen, he paid the price and bought her back. He loved her and lost her. Do you really know how much God loves you? I have to remind myself of this every once in a while. Some of you may be backslidden. Some of you may not even be saved. He couldn't redeem you with just a few coins and a little bit of barley, wheat. He had paid a price just to redeem you. A lot of times people forsake God. Some of you may have been at one time on fire for God, but you no longer have that conviction in your heart. God so loved, he couldn't buy you back with just a few coins. God so loved you that he gave his only son to purchase you back, who gave his life so that you could have life. Wow. What a price. I don't know that I could give one of my sons for you. Are you hearing? Would you give your son to pay the price for someone else? That's what he did. The price tag on you was tremendous. And he says, you're not your own. You've been bought with a price. Gomer never played the harlot again. I don't need to tell you that you've sinned. I don't need to tell you that you don't deserve what God did for you. But I will tell you, you know that better than anybody else. You know what your value is. I just wanted to tell you today this magnificent love story. God never stops loving you. He never stopped searching for you. And he paid a tremendous price for you. And he says if you'll ask him, he will forgive all of your sin, save you, wash you white as snow, and he will make you his own. I want to tell one more little story and I'm through. A couple had a girl 6 years old, and they had a little boy that was 4 years old. The girl had a blood disease and she was going to die. But for some reason, the boy had an immune system and his blood made him immune. And the doctor told the family, if we could take some of his blood and give it to his sister, it would make her immune and she could live. So the doctor went and asked the little boy. They agreed. He's 4 years old. He didn't understand. And the doctor asked him if you would give his blood so that his sister could live. And the little boy thought for a few seconds, and he said, yes, sister can have my blood. They're laying in beds just across from each other. They were taking blood out of him and giving it to her. He looked over at his sister and smiled. Then he asked the doctor, when do I die? He was willing to give his life for his sister. Two bidders are bidding for you today, God and Satan. They both want you, but the fact is, you have to choose which one gets the bid. He's already paid the price. You have to choose which one is going to win.